Welcome back to Breaking Into Breaking Bad. This is season 1, episode 3, Cats in the River. How you doing, Cabes?
Doing well, man. I'm pumped. I'm ready. Let's go.
Good, good. Yeah. Okay, so I like to usually start by having some little reflection on the title of the show. So the last one we had was Cats in the Bag, and
Right.
now this one is Cats in the River. So I think these are connected. So what's your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on what's going on with
I
the
know that
title
we
here?
had spoke about this on the last episode on why we thought it was called
Hmm.
Cats in the Bags, with this one being Cats in the River. I gotta think it has to do something with Cat being Crazy Eight and or Emilio um, being dumped. Um,
Yeah, that's where I
what do
was
you
that's
think?
what I was thinking too. Yeah. Yeah, I mean Emilio, when you think about it, he was wrapped up in that tarp. It's kind of like a bag.
Yep.
And then he ends up first thing in this episode getting flushed down the toilet. And we know where that leads
Right.
eventually
Yeah.
to the river. So,
So if you
but
guessed that,
perhaps,
bravo. Yeah, bravo.
yeah, yeah, perhaps that's what it means.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but okay, yeah. So this episode starts off really, it's a little bit, if you're not used to the kind of gore that yeah, this is kind of gross. Starts with them scrubbing up Emilio mixed in with all the
Mm.
acid that's fallen through the floor, and they're putting it in buckets and flushing it down the toilet. But we get something very important, I think, and really odd. There's flashbacks. So as Walt is cleaning up this human remains, he gets a flashback to some. It's not really clear what's going on. It's him and he's a younger man at the time, and there's a younger woman. It almost looks like he could be her teacher or something, or not.
Could
You
be,
you
yeah. You see him with a mullet, I think, and it's obviously not Skylar, and it
right.
appears that there is some kind of connection, love
There's a
connection
romantic
there.
something. Yeah, there's something
Yeah,
romantic
there's
going
something
on.
romance there going on.
Yeah, but it's a little poetic in a way, maybe dark poetic, where he's scrubbing up the remains of a human being and he's flashing back to a conversation where he's contemplating with this woman the chemical composition of a human, and he tries to account for all of the various components of a human being.
Yep.
And that, am I right that the flashback continues throughout the whole episode, right?
Yeah. Well, no, it starts in the beginning, and you get like 98% of the human body, and then at the very end, it shows the last 1.88888%
So
of
but it leaves you for a lot of the show with him wondering, I wonder what accounts for that last.
right.
We figured out what 99.8 something. It's a very tiny percentage that's left unaccounted for, right?
Right. And it goes hand in hand perfectly with them scrubbing up all of the human waste of Emilio, which
Yeah,
I love that comparison of that.
yeah.
Very cool.
Okay, so we're going to try and maintain the perspective of someone who doesn't know anything about future episodes, right? That's our commitment. So if you're watching this
Correct.
for the first time, if you're watching the show for the first time and you're listening to these episodes while you do it, we're gonna try very hard not to give anything away. And it's hard for me because I haven't seen it in so long. A lot of this is very fresh, but I
Hmm.
think it's not giving anything enough. Not giving anything away to say that flashback is part of a larger story that will become very important. So it's not just a one-off kind of thing, right?
Right. I mean, yes, yeah. From what
Okay,
you're
and we'll just leave it
from
at
that,
that.
yeah. Yep. Sounds good.
Okay. So what are the main kind of like scenes in this episode that you think are good to kind of talk about?
Well, I mean, the main thing is you see the internal struggle with Walt trying to accept the position that he's in right now. You know, in the prior scene, you saw him getting high, trying to cope with where he's at. And in this one, you literally see him go to the drawing board and split one side pros and cons of killing Crazy Eight. You know, like one,
Yeah.
it's so immoral, and the other one, it's like, well, if you don't, he's going to kill your entire family. You know, and
Right.
it's
Right. Right.
he had to break it down into these small little things because it's like he had to convince himself of the decision had to be backed by some kind of moral thought, you know, and so writing it
Mm-hmm.
down was his typical MO on how he would encounter any other problem. I feel
Yeah,
like.
and remember he had that line with Jesse where he says, "Well, look, he's a businessman. You know, he thinks about things and pros and cons and cost and
Yep.
benefit analysis." And I I think I think that's crazy to think that Crazy Eight would think that way, and so does Jesse. But Walt still is operating that way. So when he approaches
Mm-hmm.
this moral question, he thinks about it in purely rational terms. And normally, right, when you make a list of pros and cons, the side with more reasons outweighs the side with fewer reasons. But in
Right,
this
and it's
case,
kind of obvious too. It almost, for the most part, it jumps out. There's very rare occurrences where you're like, well, you know, I don't know. Um,
right, right,
but
right.
like, but like cold-blooded murder for someone that's never done anything wrong in his life, and also you have to
You mean
protect your
Walt?
family.
Walt's never done anything
Walt,
wrong in his life.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
Walt's never done anything, and he has to protect his, you know, because deep down, we know that he's not completely stupid. We know that he is beyond amateur to the 10th degree because of everything that he's doing criminal wise, right? Like
yeah,
everything is messing up, which brought them to this situation where, you know, Crazy Eight's in a bike lock, you know, in
yeah.
a in a basement. Um,
Right, right. Yeah. Well, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but I think it's okay. So
right.
in that list of things, it's interesting that he comes up with maybe, was it something like four reasons why he
Yeah,
shouldn't? And they're all moral. Like, this is wrong. This will haunt me. You know,
right.
I have
It's
no right
wrong
to
to
do
kill
this.
people.
Right, right. So he starts, and I said before in the previous episode, right, that that's a sign that his conscience is functioning properly,
Hmm.
right? He knows what's right and what's wrong, and he's having to make this choice. Now, there's you know, I think what's really important and clear in this choice as he's thinking about it is that he's up against necessity. In other words, this may be right and this may be wrong, and you should always do this, except when you can't.
Right.
And I think he's on one hand we want to sort of vindicate him and say, well, look, he had no choice. He had to
Yep.
do that because otherwise it was going to happen. But how did he get in that situation to begin with?
Right.
Because of a choice that he made. And he could not
Hmm.
have foreseen that it would lead to Crazy Eight putting a gun to his head and then him having to, make the phosphate gas and all that. Um, but
Yeah.
if you look at a series of domino, falling down, right? The first one was his choice. And so now
Hmm.
he's having to make choices that are not good choices, right? He's constrained by the consequences of his own choice. So he's already now feeling the consequences of those, and it's not good. But what really grabbed my attention in this episode was this dialogue he has with Crazy Eight the whole time. That really
Yes.
begins. It begins with Crazy Eight saying, "This this work doesn't suit you. This work doesn't suit you," and he says it a couple times.
Hmm.
And um, and again, I don't think we're giving too much away, but we can, keep in mind that phrase because it might change. Sorry, Walt might change. It might come to be where this suits him, right? But at this point, it's very clear to Crazy Eight and to us, that Walt sucks at being like a murderer, meth
Yeah, I mean,
cooker
he's pretty
person,
much calling Walt out at this point, saying like, "Listen, look where this the decisions you've made have led you, right?
Hmm.
This is not something that you planned. This is not your cup of tea, right?" And then as they're communicating, like Walt begins to open up, which before he was like, "No, I don't want to talk to you at all. I'm keeping my distance. i'm
Yep.
i'm I'm rolling the beer to you. I'm not going anywhere within an arm's length of you."
Right.
And it gets to the point where he starts to like really talk to him like, "Hey, convince me, tell me something that would make it an easy decision for me to let you go." And
Right.
to Crazy Eight's, you know he actually says some good things, like if I'm in that situation, because he says like, "Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, but anyone in my position would say that, and you would know that." So he's kind of buttering Walt up a little bit, you know and in which this kind of leads to Walt's thinking, "Yeah, I am in over my head," and then they start to
Right.
really touch on a commonality with the his father's, Crazy Eight's father's, um well, Domingo, that's his real name, Domingo. Um his father's Tampico furniture store, and he's like, "Oh, I
And
used to buy furniture there."
let's pause there just a second too.
Yep.
Domingo, we know that Walt knows that that means Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to bring to the audience's mind and to Walt's mind some association with Christianity, with God,
Right.
with religion, with right and wrong.
Morality. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's going on in that whole thing? I think two things. One is I think Crazy Eight originally assumes that Walt is as ruthless as he is, and then he realizes this guy's not ruthless. He doesn't have what it takes to be cruel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He
he
asks
didn't
for
he didn't
food and
know
water, and
he didn't know that he had cancer either, so
right,
when
right,
Walt says that, it kind of opens up like, "Oh,
yeah,
this is why you're doing it."
yeah. And to me, I think the fundamental like conflict is that Walt treats him like a human being. You know, I think one of the most interesting scenes is when he cuts the crust off of the sandwich for him.
Right.
Like, why the hell would you do that? Except
Right. Well,
as a gesture of charity, of grace, of like, I'm gonna do him a solid, right? Um, like he's you don't treat someone that you're gonna kill or that he's in his mind, he's determined not to dehumanize him.
right.
And
Yes.
in that he's retaining his own dignity, right? He's like,
Mm-hmm.
I am still a good person because I'm treating this person as a human being and giving them all that they're owed, even if we're now locked in this horrible situation where I have to keep them um, constrained. But and he says this explicitly, I'm aching for an excuse
Yes.
to trust you and let you go. And so I think when he sits down and says, "Tell me, let's have a beer." I mean, that's such a like breaking bread moment. Like let's treat each other as equals and let's hear each other's stories. And whenever you hear someone's story, it's very hard. You start to sympathize with them. It's very hard to hate them, right? And
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 you
this,
actually see the part where Walt becomes sympathetic to Domingo, because during their when he first gives him a beer, he rolls it to him, and then they start talking, and they form some commonality between the furniture store and his dad's, you know um what his relationship with his dad was. And then he's like, "You want another one?" And he hands it to him. So you
yeah,
could tell right then, like, he's feeling more
there's
comfortable.
trust. Yeah,
Yeah, there's trust that built over a span of 3 minutes,
yeah,
and you could tell that Domingo is really getting into Walt's, like, brain. He's breaking it down, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
that was that,
yeah.
that part
He's
was
Crazy Eight.
crazy.
Crazy Eight shows a high degree of intelligence, where he knows exactly how to
Hmm.
get into Walt's mind. And he says exactly the kind of things like you said. He's not in a kind of pathetic way begging for his life,
Hmm.
right? He's saying he's acting in that kind of rational, cost benefit analysis kind of thing. Like, well, I could say this, but anyone might, like you said, like he's playing on the same sort of wavelength as Walt is, and
Right.
so Walt can easily put himself in Domingo's Crazy Eight's shoes and say, yes, I understand exactly
Hmm.
what you're saying. I get it, um, and Crazy Eight basically wins, right? And so now we have to talk about the role of fortune here, and by fortune I just mean luck, chance, right? So the coin
Right.
flip is the biggest, metaphor for chance. You think about this, like what's the villain in Batman, the Two-Face,
Right.
he leaves everything up to chance, right? and
Right.
and lets that be
Sacred.
the thing. Right, but it also relieves you of moral. It seems to relieve you of moral culpability because you didn't choose it. Chance chose it, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, no, you're right. So they have, when he's wanting to back out, um, Jesse tells him, "We flipped a coin, and the coin toss is sacred." And I don't think I can wrap my mind around exactly all of what that means, except to say that we made a compact that we would abide by the dictates of fortune. And this is what it dealt us. It dealt me to deal with Emilio's body, and it dealt you to do, and you can't break that.
Right.
Um, so we see chance play there, but then also it's kind of, I think, by chance that Walt sees the broken plate in the trash can.
Right. He just
And
goes to
it's
throw
the
away
that's the
something, and then he
that's
just
the
has a moment of
only
clarity.
thing that makes him think, oh, wait a minute.
Hmm.
And it's that thing that saves his life.
And he gets so angry when he puts the plate together and he sees
Right.
the missing piece. He gets so angry because at that point he knows that he's been played by Crazy Eight, right? Like he knows it,
Well,
and he's just like, why? Like we had something going here. Why would you mess
hmm
this
hmm
up?
hmm well, and it means that on his sheet of pros and cons, it means that one reason
Yep.
on the right side of the page matters. The one reason is, if I don't kill him, he is going to kill me and all of my family. And why is he doing any of this to begin with? For his family,
Exactly.
supposedly, right? So,
Yep.
so yeah, so he's angry. So now he knows he has to do the deed.
Yeah.
Um,
It was the final like nail in the coffin for him to be okay with the decision. Like he did
mhm,
not
mhm,
want to. Like you could tell even when he grabbed onto the bike lock, he did not want to do it. But like it was easier for him to go through with it as he sees Crazy Eight like reach for it in his pants, and
right, 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 right.
he was like at that point, nope, it's my family or you,
Well,
and at that point
so here's
it was over.
here's here's what boggles my mind. I would think when he realizes there's a piece of the plate missing, and he knows that Crazy Eight has it, and that he's planning on killing him as soon as he sets him free. I'm thinking, okay, you grieve that moment, you hate it, you do everything, but then you pick up any of those other weapons that you picked up earlier, the knife, the hammer, I think there was something else, right? You go back down with one or more of those things, and he doesn't. Why does
Oh,
he go
right.
down there? It's almost
Why
like
does
he
he
was
strangle him?
why does he strangle him? That's the like the most risky thing. That's the most risky way to do it. So it's almost like he, even at the very last moment, wanted to not believe it, right? Or it just shows how incapable of gore violence he's capable of, right?
Do
Like he
you do
can't.
you think at all that he was he like it showed his anger, right? When he was saying, why? Do you think it had anything to do with maybe a lack of vision on how to kill him, right? Like, well, I don't know. He did the mustard gas. That was pretty visionary. Um,
Yeah, and he picks up the knife and he picks up the hammer beforehand and he starts like making the motion like he knows
yeah,
what to do. That would just be a much safer because he knows he's got the piece, you know.
yeah,
Uh, and obviously the way he kills him, having to dance around that dang pole, that it's
hmm
dangerous, like it's risky. He could have knocked him out and then tripped him or something. I mean, I don't know. There was still a high degree of chance involved in that, in the way he did it, but it worked out in the end. But he still got stabbed
yeah.
in the leg.
And then, and as he was doing it toward the very end, and even afterwards, he was just apologetic the whole time,
Yeah.
even though he knew that if he didn't do that, he was gonna get killed. He was just saying, "I'm sorry, I'm
Hmm.
sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry" the whole time.
Yeah. Now I'm going to speculate on something here, and I don't know if there's any legitimacy
Go
to
for
this,
it.
but I was trying to think, why did they include that detail of him stabbing him in the leg like that? And this moment is a pretty significant one because the past things he's done have all been pretty easy to justify, right? The selling a little bit of meth to make some money for your kid and your wife to be okay when you die, right? Nobody gets hurt.
Hmm.
Easy to think of it that way, easy to justify. This one's really hard to justify because it's not immediately self-defense situation, right? It's very much it's the most evil thing he's done, right? And I think maybe he's afraid if he does this act, he will have killed someone. And once you've crossed that threshold, right, evil kind of grows that way. And I
Hmm.
was thinking in sort of Christian theology, right, the story of the way that evil enters the world through the serpent tempting Eve and then Adam. Uh, we get this vision of the serpent will strike the heel of the son of Adam, and then the son of Adam eventually will strike the head of the serpent. But in this moment, we almost see the serpent biting the heel of the
Hmm.
human. It's like evil is taking hold of him.
Yeah, because of all the domino effect of choices that he's made, right? Like
Right.
it's kind of
Right.
culminated to this point where like what did you expect, to happen? And
Right.
it was kind of like the tipping point for him. And
Yeah.
like I think when he finally put his leg up to do the final blow, because he was just dancing around in circles as as he was being jabbed, and nothing was happening, just going around in circles. I think him putting his leg up there was like I'm gonna sacrifice to do this final
hmm
thing, was him really like passing into the no man's land of, per
Right.
se, Breaking Bad.
Right. 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 Yeah. Okay. Well, we might have. Yeah. You okay, Caves?
I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. You can always mute your mic if you have to do that. But
Duly
no, it's
noted.
it's an emotional thing, He's Breaking Bad at this moment, and I understand it gets to you even after your 12th time of watching it, 13th time of watching it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So okay. So that is kind of the climax of the whole episode. But there are a couple other things going on in this episode we should talk about. So uh Marie, the
Oh,
sister of
gosh.
um of Skylar, she's kind of an odd character. Like you immediately don't like her. I mean, I don't like her. Like she's nosy. She has this like really passive aggressive relationship with Skylar. Um, and then what in the world do they make her a klepto, right?
Yeah, she's the worst. She's the
Yeah. Now,
worst.
Capes,
I'm
yeah, now Capes, you've had some experience with with kleptomaniacs. You've seen this in action in your previous line of work. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I used to catch shoplifters for a living for several years. Um,
yeah, it's a
it
weird psychological disorder, right?
Yeah, like even like your amateur, if they if you steal something once and get away with it, you feel like you're untouchable and you just do it forever until you get caught, and
Right.
judging by how easily Marie just makes this decision shows that this is definitely not her first rodeo.
Hmm.
Um
Hmm.
and
Okay, so you're bringing the expertise into it. Yeah, so she's done this before. It wasn't her first time. Yeah,
oh yeah, you
interesting.
could tell that this was definitely not a let me do this for the first time because of how I'm being treated. Like she went in there for the and she even talked about how she didn't like those shoes earlier in the episode. But
Really? Oh, I missed that.
yeah, yeah. Well, she was saying like she doesn't like the look, but they feel comfortable. But one thing to keep in mind, whenever you and even though I've seen this as many times, I think I'm almost positive that every time you see Marie in an episode, she's wearing something purple.
Oh,
I don't
that's
know why
interesting.
I don't know why they did this, but every time she's in an episode, I'm
Hmm.
almost positive she's wearing something purple. Crazy.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so purple in the Christian liturgical calendar is the color for Lent and often for Advent too, which is this are sort of penitential seasons when you're repenting.
Hmm.
But she doesn't seem. I don't know. We'll keep. I'm just throwing it out there. So we'll know to be looking for her wearing purple in the future and try to put that together. We don't have to answer it right now, but we're just flagging it, right?
Right. At this point, all we know is that she's super nosy and she wants to know everything about what's going on with Walt Jr.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's right. So why does she leave her old pair of shoes? She steals like
It was more of
is
a
it
snub to the person, the sales lady, because she was like, "Hey, you
okay?
need to put on socks before you put on those shoes." I'm like, "I'm
Yeah, yeah.
extremely clean. Well, I would appreciate if you did." So it was more of a
Right, right,
snub.
right. So in addition to stealing your shoes, you're gonna have to clean up my old shoes.
Right. And she didn't care. She wanted
Yeah.
her to know that she stole it,
Ah, uh-huh.
Like
Right, right, right,
it's
right.
my calling card in a weird way.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay, interesting. So again, I don't think that's accidental. I think the writer and the
Yep.
they put that in there for a reason. I mean, every character in this story has got some weird disability or problem,
Mm-hmm.
and this is hers. So there we go. Okay. Um, what else is going on here? So yeah. Uh, Skylar is puts this weird thought in Marie's mind that Walter Jr. might be smoking marijuana, which
Mm-hmm.
she's not thinking about Walter Jr., she's thinking about Walter Sr., but accidentally gets Marie to
Yep.
start putting things together where she gets Hank to talk to him. And it was really, really telling, I thought, the line where when she calls Hank, I mean, it's comical, right? He's in the middle of like an arrest and he's taking
Mm-hmm.
phone calls. Um, and he says, well, why doesn't Walt talk to him, And she says, well, Hank, he respects you. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh man, okay, so does that mean he doesn't respect his father?
She didn't even bring up like he brought up like, well, what about his dad? She didn't even like acknowledge that piece. She just said, well, he respects you. Like he didn't even say, well, yeah, but she didn't even acknowledge the whole Walter part of it,
Yeah,
and you're right that that was pretty telling,
yeah,
might have to do something with the DEA drug, blah blah blah, but
right, right, right. Okay, so what happens? So Hank takes Walter Jr. to a bad part of town, to the really
Crystal
gross
Palace. Yep.
Crystal Palace. Yeah, that's right. And I don't know. It seemed to me he kind of enjoyed showing that his nephew that he's the tough guy, and
Oh
he's a
yeah,
jerk. He's a real jerk to the hooker, right?
Wendy. Yep.
Wendy, you're right.
Yeah.
And he's again, I think it shows part of his personality that he's a little insecure in a way. And if he enjoys showing off to people who are much, much younger and weaker, like Walter Jr., like, look how tough I am. I can tell this hooker what to do, what to do, and
Mm-hmm.
I can show off how much I know. She's, smokes crack or whatever it is. And
Right. Show me your
um,
teeth. Yeah, she's on the pipe.
right.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of funny, coincidental, right? That she's then meeting up with Jesse
Right.
right
Yeah.
after they leave. They just throw that in there, like, wow,
Mhm.
okay. All right. So anything else in this episode? Do you think we need
Yeah.
to?
So I think the biggest part here, which is going to lead into the next episode, is while Walter is contemplating his decision, Skylar calls him. Do you remember the call? Very, very important call. And she said, and he's coming up with this, oh, honey, I'm sorry, I'm late. I was, I should have said
Oh,
no,
right,
but I
right, right,
got
right.
stuck at the car wash. And she said, really? Because I called Bogdan, his old boss at the A1A car wash, and he said you quit or were fired 2 weeks ago. And so he's caught red-handed at that point,
Yeah,
which she's
right.
already had her assumptions. And he just,
Yeah,
you could tell that his, got caught with his hand in the candy jar. Like he doesn't know what to do. And he was just like, uh, can we talk about this? And she said, you know what, wherever you're at, stay put. So
right, right.
that part also leads, I think, to him feeling up against the wall, like you had mentioned earlier. Like he was at a place where it's like, listen, I'm kind of all in at this point.
Yeah,
Um, and then obviously at the very end, it shows him stopping on that bridge, which goes back to the flashback.
yep. Okay, so yeah, so let's talk about that.
Yep.
I thought it was really important that he's contemplating what he's going to do while he's on a bridge. It's like an in-between place, right? He's neither here nor there,
Yeah,
right? That's what a
good
bridge
point.
is. And it's while he's on that bridge that he has this flashback. So the last end, so we ended the last part of the flashback was him saying there's this final point something something percent of the human person that I can't account for materially, right?
Hmm.
And so then he has this moment, aha, that must be the soul. And so what is the effect of bringing up the soul?
Well, the girl, the lady brings it up. She goes, "What about the soul?" And he goes, "The
She
soul."
brings it up. She
She
brings it
brings it
up.
up. She says, "What about the
Okay.
soul?"
Yeah.
Very, very,
Yeah.
innocently. And he goes, "Oh man." And then he gets really in her face, very romantically almost, and was
Hmm.
like, "We're dealing with straight chemistry here," But he's
Uh-huh.
obviously
Uh-huh.
open. I don't know if the chemistry was like, hey, like a pun to like, hey,
Yeah.
between you and
There's a
me.
romantic
But
chemistry, right?
I think he was also like, at that point, he might have not really like, ha ha ha, yeah, the soul, sure. But at that point, it was so true because he literally just killed
Mm.
somebody, and he had a conversation with this person, like
Hmm. Hmm.
he
He's
obviously had you know a, a big impact on the conversation that was going on with them. And
right. And
with
remember, the guy's still got his cancer diagnosis. He knows he's gonna die
Mhm.
soon. People who are ready to die are already thinking about their soul. And the
Yeah.
last thing they want to be doing is stuff that they think, might endanger their soul. And so he's got to be feeling it all the more. And I guess that's where we have to
Yeah.
leave it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit. I mean, the very last thing that was said was, he walks, Walter walks into the house to a cry. a very sad Skylar, and he just says, "Skylar, I have to tell you something," and then it ends.
Yeah.
So I think we know what he's going to say, but you don't know, So
Yeah.
until
Stay
next time, I
tuned.
guess, right?
That's right. Okay, so we'll move on now to episode 4.
Boom.